What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Fresh Podcast. We're bringing everything fresh in entertainment. I am your host, Drew Brumfield. Join with me. I got the whole crew again with me today. First up first, it's Randy. Randy, how you doing?
Absolutely fantastic and ready to talk about a big monster.
Wow, I can't believe it. I love it. And we also got this year's Father of the Year, Robert. Robert, how are you doing?
Uh, Sorry, I was not ready for that introduction. I'm a cat dad now.
Yes,
I'm not a
Robert.
human dad. I'm a cat dad.
That
Anyway,
we know
I'm
of.
doing great. I'm ready to talk about monster that go roar.
Okay, okay. And we have our resident Godzilla superfan here. You know him, you love him. It's Seth. Seth, how are you doing? Are you full of energy this morning?
I'm doing good. I'm just excited that we're. I think this is the first and only time we've done a Godzilla podcast, which is amazing. So I'm just excited for that. Just that
Some,
alone makes
yeah.
me super excited.
Somehow we've referenced him a few times, just because of
Mm,
you
I know I
before.
have, yeah.
You have. But yes, if it wasn't obvious by everyone else saying it, we are talking about Godzilla, but not any Godzilla. We're not talking about that filthy American Godzilla. We care about that one. But that's not what the people want. The people want Godzilla Minus One, a foreign film that kind of came over and took over America and took over theaters for a very brief period of time. Before I get too into that, I wanted to give a quick shout out. If you haven't already, go see our TikTok page or see our YouTube shorts. A lot of great content there, and yeah, especially if you can't handle the 1 to 2 hour like long podcast video, got a little fresh bites in there for you. And yeah, also thank you for all the support and comments on the Baldur's Gate video. That has been doing amazing. Keep that up. Hopefully, we can do more in person podcasts in the future. But I think that's enough shameless plugging for now. What do you guys think? You think you're ready to talk about Godzilla?
I've been ready. I've been ready for
He's
like over 6 months, dude.
exactly. Yeah, super timely review by the way. Like I know it came out on Netflix a little while, but like yeah, we
Well,
waited a good
I was
minute
about to
to
say,
do this one.
we waited a good while for it to finally come to streaming. Not even
Yeah,
just streaming, but like just a digital release.
yeah.
Oh
I
yeah.
remember I kept looking like maybe once a month, just checking in. Like, have they announced anything? How about this month? No? Okay. And then they just kind of surprise dropped it and they're like, hey, it's available.
It's here.
On
Yeah,
Netflix, finally.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's
I think it
Um,
wild
was
too.
like the most like pirated movie for a while because it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't like anywhere over here.
I feel like that
Yeah,
happens a lot with like foreign films that get a lot of traction. I seem to remember something like that happening with like Your Name back in
yeah,
like 2016 where like a lot of people just pirated that movie because it's like, oh shit, this is like a really cool anime film. So people are just going to Kiss Anime and shit, rip in peace.
yeah. But no, this movie like did a lot, and I remember originally it was only supposed to be in theaters for like 2 weeks or something, like less than a month, and but it
Mhm.
kept doing well, and people kept coming into theaters to go see it, and it kept staying in theaters because it kept making money. More theaters start showing minus one, and this would, and we'll get into why later, but is such a hard movie to recommend to people here in the West because you want to tell them like, no, it's like really good and it's like really well acted and has like a great story, but then they're like the Godzilla movie. You're like, yes, no, I know, but just like forget Godzilla's there for a minute, like, and it's really,
Yeah.
but yeah,
It's funny that it's funny that you say it's a hard I imagine we'll get into it, but it's funny that you say it's a harder sell. It's like actually I think it's been easier than ever before. Because I know at work I've talked with like I've talked with anchors who like they have kids and shit. They have no interest in Godzilla before. It's like I think I'm gonna check out this minus one movie. Like it's on Netflix now. It's like you absolutely should. It's just like it's wild to me
uh,
that it's appealing to like so many different people.
yeah.
I think a lot of it due to word of mouth and the fact that like you hey, this is also a cat not just a Godzilla movie. This is a Academy Award winning Godzilla movie.
Yeah. I was talking about specifically when it was out in theaters. and I was trying to spread the word of mouth.
Oh yeah, I
'Cause
think that just kind of depended where you were.
Yeah, because when I was talking to my coworkers and stuff, they were, you know, a lot of my work, they're film buffs, and they're like, "Oh, Godzilla, like, really?" And I'm like, "No, okay, not like Godzilla, like the way you think of." Because there was another Godzilla movie that came out this same year, and I was like, "No, not that. That's the American thing. Don't look at that. We'll look at that later." But
I might look at that tonight. We'll see.
yeah, all right,
It was a
but
fun time.
let's get into specifically of why we love this movie, and I want to start with the opening because I think this movie has a really good opening, and I also love the fact that when you first like see Godzilla like come out of like the water, I love really tiny and a bit more realistic Godzilla. I don't know why because it was such a shock in theaters of just like, oh well, Godzilla's coming out, but he comes out as like he's barely taller than like a building. He's just a regular big lizard. And I kind of like that. That's like, oh, he's
As
scaled
regular
down.
big lizards go,
Yeah, you know, as
Yeah,
regular ones. Look,
he's average size.
Yeah, I've seen those all the time. No, he's
And like,
even kind of cute.
I think the thing is like it reminded me a lot of Jurassic Park, the size of Godzilla when he comes out. When we first get introduced, like Koichi, he's the kamikaze pilot, our main character on Odo Island. Fun fact: Odo Island is actually in the original Godzilla movie. That is where Godzilla first emerges in the film as well, in the original 1954 film. So like, sorry, you're gonna get a lot of that. You got me on the podcast. There's a lot of callbacks to the original Godzilla film and other Godzilla movies, and one of the best parts when I realized was like, I mean, I was already like, this is such a nerdy thing, but like I was definitely getting goosebumps whenever I remember it popping up with like kind of saying like the date or something. It's like Odo Island. I was like, oh shit, like we're already here. It's like, oh my god. But I think what really helps sell that scene, which is get right into it with when Godzilla first emerges, is I think we have never seen Godzilla target humans specifically this much before. Now, granted, there's other films where he has like singled out one human and like blasted him with like atomic breath or something like that before because they were like there's a couple of different films that are like that, but here it's a very visceral, like more predatory Godzilla that I don't think we're used to seeing. This was the first time I ever seen Godzilla bite down specifically on people. Most of the time when even when in his more evil incarnations, Godzilla doesn't really like specifically bite down or single out humans when he would attack. Most of the times whenever he kills humans, it's like a casualty that he just walked through a building or stepped on them or just atomic blasted like some buildings. Like it never felt like he was targeting one person specifically. But here he is like going in and like biting down on like people and flinging them in the air and like crushing them, like very specifically going after like targets. And it got a very visceral response. Like the best way I could put it is I'd never seen Godzilla bite down on a human before in all the movies I'd ever watched him in, and it's insane to see it happening here in this movie. It immediately gives you the idea of what kind of Godzilla that we're dealing with, and this is not the fun Godzilla with like he has like a little son and all that and he's gonna do like floating drop kicks. Like this is definitely gonna be we are going for a visceral and very dark version of like Godzilla, and I love that. Like I think that's a lot of reasons of like why people like this film too. It's just like it's a bit more of like a darker more
Godzilla
like
that's just
serious
fucking
version.
pissed.
Yeah, so fucking
Is it-
mad.
So like usually does he not like retaliate? Because this is actually the first Godzilla movie I've watched. Does he
Mhm.
usually not like retaliate with like people like attacking him? Because like
Oh,
I
he
kind of
He
does.
does.
He
No,
does.
what Seth means is about usually like when he like bites down something, he's like biting down on like a train or a plane that you're like there's people inside there. This is the
Or
first
another
time
monster.
you see or another monster. This is the first time it's just a person and teeth. There's nothing in between.
it's like It's
'Cause-
like
or like
kind of how I interpreted like that first like encounter of Godzilla was like the soldiers were shooting at him, so I thought he was like retaliating like, oh
oh, he
man, that
was.
tickled, I'm gonna kill you now.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, look,
plus
he was gonna
also
kill those
like
guys no matter what. Like,
yeah, and also like I mean I think that's how he knew where they were is the gunshots. That definitely seems to be suggested in the film that like that's how he was able to find them. But like the doctor kind of mentions later in the film that this Godzilla, the main reason he's like having these attacks, and at first it's small just on Odo Island, but of course once he mutates it gets bigger, is that he is protecting his territory. And that is why he's going on. And basically, he sees these humans on this island, like, "Hey, fuck off! Like, you're on my shit. Get out of here."
Yeah.
yeah.
He's using like the dead like fish as like a territory mark,
No, I
I
think the dead
guess.
fish are leftovers of his first meal, but
Well,
Yeah,
it
but
it
that's his
gives
no,
sense.
territory though.
so no, not those either. So the dead fish, they specifically say these are deep sea fish. Basically, the idea is that like Godzilla retreats into the ocean and kind of like sticks out at the bottom, and when he begins to resurface, he carries these deep sea fish on him. So it's kind of like it's like a symptom. It's a sign that like Godzilla is near. Is
Oh,
because
the
when
warning
he's
sign.
yeah, whenever he starts to surface, all the deep sea fish also start to surface with him as well.
Okay, but yeah. So before we move on from that first scene, I also wanted to ask you guys, minor detail in the first one, but a lot of like what the main character like struggles through, on top of like being a kamikaze pilot and bit like chickening out of it, which God, what a way to open a Godzilla movie. I love it. But also the fact that he didn't fire his gun at tinier Godzilla. That gun wouldn't do anything, right? Like I'm not like he's not crazy.
No, not a chance.
Yeah,
No.
there's no
The,
way.
the director did like I think the director and also the novelization of this film basically like even if he had pulled the trigger, it wouldn't have stopped him. It would have just gotten him killed. Like
Yeah.
it would not have stopped Godzilla. But I think obviously it ties into his character narrative where he believes that he could have done something even though it really was an impossible situation and there quite literally nothing he could do.
Yeah, like I know he doesn't get like his like Wolverine levels of regeneration until later in the movie. But he's like when the guy's like, that's a 12 millimeter gun, it could kill everything. And I was like, oh buddy, I forgot what year this is. There's gonna be leaps in technology pretty soon.
Yeah,
It's the 40s,
Yeah.
like right after World War II.
But not
Yeah.
after.
Well, it starts like at the end of it, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, so like the film kind of picks up the first part here is like it kind of picks up in the like sort of last years of World War II. And then as it progresses, it does advance like a little
That's
bit
post,
afterwards.
yeah. But like the opening is still like very late into it. But yeah, outside of like that opening, and after the first time we see Godzilla in that opening, we don't really see him for a while because after that, now it's a drama about how a World War II pilot who abandoned his post has to come back to a Japan that's still heart-wrenched from war and getting dropped bombs and has to figure out how to live his life with this like survivor's guilt. And in one of my notes, I was like, it's really, this is what I was talking about earlier. It's like, it's really just hard to describe that this movie has one of the best depictions of PTSD and survivor syndrome and describe that to people that it's a Godzilla movie. And you have to almost go
But
back.
it has like really strong like depictions of this, and it's
Yeah, and I'm like,
done very well. And
in a
people are like, in a
Godzilla
Godzilla movie? And you're like,
Yeah.
yes.
and you're
Yeah,
like,
I think
you have to go back to thinking like, because original Godzilla, and I'm sure Seth can also talk more about this, of he was a metaphor or basically a response to Japan's fear of the nuclear power, because that's how Godzilla was formed, and like the destruction of war and bombs and all that and what it can do to this city. And this movie goes back to that metaphor as well.
I think it definitely gets in that. I think the movie goes beyond that where it is now beyond just the nuclear weapon, although it's still very much present the nuclear weapon fears. But I think it is also kind of like commenting about like Japan's militarization like during the war, and like how they like treated their own like military, its own citizens. I mean, it's very critical of the idea of kamikaze pilots alone.
Yeah.
Which is this is all based on this is historically true. The Japanese Empire at the time did create this like insane levels of fanaticism and devotion to the Japanese Imperial Army, even to the point where it's just like, yes, we will have young men, boys, really, hop into planes and like go on suicide missions. Um, it was both it was both a strategy not only to like effectively take out targets, but it was also meant to be intimidation. It was meant to kind of like send a message to the rest of the Japanese Empire that you need to be in line, one way or the other. Like, hey, you can like putting up these suicide missions as if it's like an honorable thing. But also kind of like trying to keep control of these people. That's one of the fascinating parts I love about this film is like how it really dives into like the really icky area about like Japan and its involvement in World War II, and also at the same time kind of showing some of the other awful stuff that happened. If people don't know, after World War II, Japan basically its military was completely disbanded. Japan does not have a military anymore. It has effectively like a coast guard. It now has like a sort of like defense force to protect itself, but beyond that, they do not really have a proper military anymore. And you kind of see that happening in Godzilla whenever it's just like, well, how are we going to organize against like Godzilla? Like it's like maybe just like kind of ragtag groups of like vets. They're sort of left to their own devices. They even bring up the fact that like other world countries, especially the US, are just like, you guys are on your fucking own. Um
Yeah, because this was also during the time of like we're skipping ahead. We'll go back, but just to finish this point, it's like this is when Seth was talking about when Godzilla comes back. This is during the time of like the Cold War, so neither U.S. or Russia can really put any aid forward without like sparking that into something more. And everyone else in the world is too deep into their own politics and that to even pay
well,
attention to what's happening here.
it's that, but it's also a feeling amongst I think a lot of like Japanese people, where a lot of the direction of their government and their way of life was no longer in their control. Um, because like the mandates for like why like why Japan can no longer have a formal military, which still exists to this day, that mandate still exists, is because the U.S. government, especially, I know there was other world governments involved with it, but the U.S. government especially was pushing it forward. Like you cannot form your own military anymore. It is the feeling that like Japan, it's like yes, we can have a prime minister and all this stuff, but at the end of the day, foreign powers got to dictate how we ran our country after World War. Foreign powers basically got to dictate how Japan would be run after World War II. Um, I think that's why there's such like a somewhat of a nationalist tone to this film. I have to be careful about using the word nationalist because it's both speaking out of it criticizes both sides. It criticizes the Japanese government for what it did to its citizens and like its involvement in the war, but it's also I think critical of like foreign powers basically kind of robbing I think like a lot of like Japanese people of their agency in the world and how they get to run their own government. I'm sorry, I'm getting this
No, you're
complicated.
good.
But this is happening in a Godzilla film, and weirdly, it's not the first Godzilla film to touch on something like this. If another really good Godzilla film, Shin Godzilla, uh, also called Godzilla Resurgence, but I hate Resurgence. I hate that name. Um, Shin Godzilla came out in 2016, and that film also dealt with a lot of those themes. It's another reboot of Godzilla, and a big plot conflict in that film is the fact that Japan basically has to plead with foreign governments, and foreign governments kind of start to collectively agree. hey, maybe we should just drop a nuclear bomb on Godzilla. And it's the fear that, like, yes, they're doing it to eliminate this monster that's killing a lot of Japanese people, but you see the visceral reaction in a lot of people where all these foreign governments are deciding, hey, we're going to fix your problem by dropping another nuclear catastrophe on top of you, and there's nothing you can do. There is no say you have in this. Sorry, slight spoiler for Shin Godzilla. Thankfully, I haven't spoiled most of the movie, so you can still go watch that. But I think I think this film is kind of continuing some of those themes as well. Um, like I said, there's so much like layers to this film, and I love it. The reason I speak so passionate, I know I've mentioned it before, but like I am half Japanese, so like I have very like I have like a sort of like a personal connection with all this and knowing about this history. And like I said, not at all trying to say that like the Japanese government was flawless or like clean or like they had clean hands. What they did, they kind of got in a sense sort of what was coming to them, I guess in a sense, but at the same time there's other moral issues like uh you know by testing these nuclear bombs on civilian targets, not military even. These were civilian targets. Uh, you have unleashed the means by which humanity can now destroy itself, and it's now in the open, and everybody knows. And we are still living with the repercussions of that to this day. So, sorry, this is my TED talk, but
Okay.
like I said, this if it goes further to help solidify the point that like I understand that the perception of like Godzilla films, and I deeply love Godzilla films. I've been thinking about it, and while I haven't watched every single one of them, I can definitely say there is not a single Godzilla film I do not like. Yes, that includes the 1998 American one by Roland Emmerich. I do love
That's a
that
lot of
one.
fish.
Yeah, that's a lot of fish. Um, but it's I think Godzilla, you can have both. You can have goofy WWE style wrestling matches between him and other big monsters, but I think also Godzilla can be more serious. You can tap into much more like more serious topics. Hell, even though they have become WWE wrestling matches, one of the things I do like about the kind of Legendary Studios American Godzilla MonsterVerse stuff is a lot of like the monsters and like what Godzilla represents is about like the climate and like kind of like trying to bring balance back because of climate change, human-made climate change. So I really like that Godzilla is a flexible figure. He's a big monster. He can represent a lot of different things. It just really comes down to the writers of how far you want to take it. And I think this film just does an exceptional job with what it has available to it.
Yeah. I don't have much more to add on
I
it, but no, I agree.
Yeah, I feel like the next thing we should talk about then is to figure out some way to lead into this. We should talk about the main character.
Yeah, well,
Uh,
yeah, not just him, but like I think all four of like I guess like the crew, because it's him, it's Captain and Kid and Doc as they're all nicknamed. Um,
yeah,
and real quick, I'll go over them. I like the side characters because they all like basically come forward with like an idea or like a perspective on kind of what you were saying on their views towards like the government. Like the captain is he freaking hates the government and like how they were treated, and he says it multiple times of just like the only thing this country's good for is controlling information. They suck. And like especially early in the film, he's really pissed off because he served in the war and he saw how people were treated. Um, Versus Kid, and I know like they actually have real names, but Captain kept calling him that, so that's what stuck in my head. Has this like mindset was like, oh, I was just a year away, and he still has that like soldier pride from when like they were all young, and he's like, I wish I could. I wanted to go and I wanted to prove myself for my country and prove myself to my fellow man. I don't want to be viewed as like weak.
Like he could be a hero in war,
Yeah, I
like
could.
that
I
kind of
wish I. Yeah,
propaganda.
and that
It
culminates.
doesn't take Keiichi much time to get kind of like pissed at him for that too.
Yeah, saying, "Oh, I wish the war lasted a year longer" to a kamikaze pilot. Yeah, that's not the best thing to say. Uh,
Yeah, who and I mean, like, you're right. They bring so many different perspectives. I especially like that you basically get like different phases. Like you
mhm.
kind of get the kid who is like you said, very naive, still believes that like, oh man, if I could have been in the war, I could have been a hero and stuff like that. That kind of parroting just the propaganda that he's been fed his whole life.
Yeah.
Um, and then you get Koichi, who is still a young man, but he is fresh from the war, and those wounds are still like I think it makes him like a very volatile kind of person. And so like he does explode on the kid, and it's very clear that like he's still reckoning with it. And I feel like with the captain, he's an older vet, and it's like I feel like in a sense he has found like some level of peace. And I think the thing that kind of helps the captain move forward is that he makes it clear that like he's like, I have no respect for my government for what it did to me and my people,
Mhm.
but I still have a duty to my people, and that's why he
Yeah.
does what he does.
Yeah.
Um, and now that leaves us the Doctor, who I also think is another kind of phase of processing the war. If you want to introduce him, Drew.
Yeah, no, okay. So I thought you were gonna keep going with it. No, I mean Doc is, yeah, he was a scientist and he was a backline, but he was a lot of like, I don't know, probably not during the war, but later in the movie, he becomes like the decision maker. Like when they actually have to start planning and stuff. And I think a lot of his character is kind of like the final stage of, we know that we have to like do better, and like I'm going to make a plan that we don't have people who are basically going on like suicide missions. We are going to like it's away from nationalism in the sense of just like I'm doing this for a flag, and in the way of it's like I'm doing it for the people and for like my fellow man. And yeah, I think that's probably like the main and then also, well, I guess I should talk about oh gosh, I'm gonna get I accidentally wrote the names backwards, so I might get these two names back.
So, are you talking about Koichi's kind of
Ishima
girlfriend?
Yeah.
Or was it
Yeah,
Koichi or
Oh,
Keiichi?
So
so
I always read as Koichi.
yeah, it's
Okay.
Koichi, and then I think I got the names backwards. So Nor- Noriko is his
Noriko.
Noriko
I
is
know that. Yeah, I know that because that's my mom's first name is Noriko.
oh, okay.
So
That is
yeah.
Gotcha.
his girlfriend, not wife, right? And then
There,
Sumiko is
yeah.
his like
yeah, ambiguous.
yeah, and
Yeah,
Sumiko is
kinda.
his neighbor.
Yep.
Okay, so I think I wrote those names backwards, and I was looking at that. I was like, that's not right. Um, no, and her view is Noriko is the very realistic view, of just like, look, the war was awful, but like no one deserves debt. Like you should do your best to live and try to continue your life throughout past like that horrible moment. But Koichi is just kind of still stuck in the like that survivor's guilt of like it should have been me that like died. Everything in my life has pointed me to I should not be alive to this moment. Uh, I shouldn't be able to have a happy wife and a daughter, and I shouldn't be able to come home to this. Um, and then yeah, finally, Sumiko. I I always laugh every time I watch this movie because Sumiko goes from your neighbor comes home and is like, "Fuck you, it's your fault we lost the war," but also I'm gonna help take care of your kid, but still, fuck
Yeah.
you.
It's like she cares him, but she feels like he's dishonorable because his duty in war was essentially to kill himself.
Yeah,
Well,
but
for
that's
the
not the
good of the
kid's fault.
country. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's cool that you kind of, in a way, she kind of represents, I think, like the Japanese citizens and like the masses, and kind of moving away from that perspective of just like, from the propaganda they were fed of like, oh, like, you didn't do your duty, you didn't honor us, to now understand it. It's like, no, I want you to live. I don't want you to like throw your life away in like this mission.
Yeah, her character arc is like accepting the fact that like no, I mean, it's not Komichi's fault that he's alive. You know, I mean, he feels the guilt in that, and you don't have to remind him of it. But like, it's ultimately a good thing that he wants to live. Like the most basic. It's so wild to say that. Like the most basic human right ever, the desire to continue to be living, is
Yeah,
was essentially
I
like
think I kind of think that
stripped away.
Noriko and Akiko kind of helped give him more of a reason to live.
Yeah.
like they build up that sense of like family and community building up after the war. Um, I think it's because another thing to tackle on too is, and I think the perspective you need to understand is like with Japan, there is it's the difference between us and the US of like how we view people and their role in society. Japan has a very like collective group mindset where like it's not about the individual, it's about the group. Everybody has to pitch in to do something for the greater good for everyone. Versus in America, it's more individual driven where it's like you should pursue your own goals, your own dreams and focus on your own self-betterment. I think what we kind of get is a bit of what Godzilla Minus One kind of proposes is sort of like an in between where it's like, don't go so far to where you believe that the best solution to helping everyone is to just throw away your life. Like, you definitely have a life worth living and you have people around you that need you in their life. But at the same time, it's like, that you can serve, you still have a duty to everyone else to take care of your fellow neighbor, but do it without throwing away your life. When we get to that monologue with the doc at the end, I'm just, oh my god, it's my favorite part of the film, honestly, in terms of dialogue. But like that's I think like the key point, and it's just understanding like with Japanese culture that that's why they're all so pissed is because it's always about the greater good, the collect for the collective to the most extreme.
Yeah. Even to the point where it's like, even if he finished the like the idea that like some people actually think like, oh, even if he actually did go through with the kamikaze thing, that would have changed anything. Like that he would have stopped any of that, like the bombs and the raids, any of that from happening. Um, and it's because at the beginning they're also just still driven on this mind of like, no, we're community, and if they tell us to die, we have to die. Versus towards the end of the film, what an actual community is supposed to look like. But no, all these characters, I love that all these characters, I don't think that anyone is like on screen for more than they should be. Like everyone gets a moment to shine and a moment to talk and put forth their ideas, and the film kind of allows, it doesn't, I wouldn't say it slows down because I think the film has really good pacing, but it allows you to like take in the moment of just like, yeah, there's a bad situation, but like when we work together and like you can they can build their life back up.
Right.
Until
I think the
yeah.
Yeah, I think the when I promise last thing I'll say like on these characters is like I think the thing that helps is like we talk about yes the different things that they kind of represent about like the attitudes of like Japanese people in the military in the late stage of the war and post-war, but also they're still characters, they're still people, they still have things they like and dislike, and they still joke around and like have to deal with like the menial like everyday bullshit, especially whenever it's like, hey, your whole neighborhood just got bombed out and now you had to live in a shell of like where you used to live and having to make just ends meet, like trying to find like a job and all this stuff. It's uh I like the mundaneness of their lives that they managed to bring in. I love the moments where they just have like Koichi and the crew come back to his place, or they're at
Yeah.
like a bar and they're just kind of like just chilling out with each other.
Yeah. I love that moment too because it really establishes like Koichi's views on himself early on, and like someone like they make a joke. It was like, "Oh, Koichi, how'd you get so lucky to get a wife like this?" And they kind of laugh. She's like, "I'm not his wife," and then he walks away, and they're all like, "Is this your?" And he's
Bro.
like, "That's not my kid. Don't call me dad." And like everyone's reaction, even as the audience reaction too. At first, I was like, what are you doing, man? She's nice, she cooks, she does all these, and then you realize later it's like it's not that he wants to do that, but it's the fact that he doesn't feel like he's earned it. He's still in this mindset of just like, I let people die. I shouldn't be winning in life. Good things shouldn't be happening to me.
Yeah.
So again, like his whole perspective is, they even say it's like, the war's not over for him, like in his head.
Yeah.
No, he still carries that burden from Edo Island.
And I think it's an interesting perspective into wait, I mean we talked about this with PTSD where he is taking like it's just how personal it gets with Koichi against Godzilla. Because like you can trace back a lot of the awful things that happened to him is directly because of Godzilla. But it's not because Godzilla has this weirdly enough, it's not because Godzilla has a specific vendetta against Koichi. He doesn't. He's just a
Nah.
big monster who's
I don't.
destroying
I
things.
think that Godzilla actually directly hates that man for whatever reason.
I will
That's
say
my
the
ta-
timing is unfortunate,
I
but
literally
like
have in my notes that that Godzilla is the Kendrick Lamar to this man's Drake. He hates that man
Oh, no.
so much.
Oh boy.
he does, he really does.
The
but
moment,
what-
the moment this man starts getting happy and be like, maybe I can be happy. Godzilla shows up again. Fuck your wife. Fuck this city. Go back to being a pilot. I'm out. I'm going back in the water. Just the second this man has any happiness, he shows back up.
I know I've seen all like the memes on TikTok and stuff like that, and it's very funny. But I actually think this is a good kind of analogy for kind of like survivor's guilt, where basically you have a character who believes they don't deserve a happy life. They haven't earned it, or they don't deserve it. They shouldn't even be alive. And what they're doing is that they are viewing just the worst moments in their life, and for some reason they're taking that as signs from the universe. It's like, see, you don't deserve to be happy. But that's a thing that you're looking outward on an event and internalizing it into yourself. Um like let's say Drew, I'm going to use you as an example because
good.
unfortunately you tend to be the punching bag a lot of times. Let's say uh let's say something just awful, traumatic happened in your past. I'm not going to try to specify what. And
Not get
you for some
specific,
reason
weird about it. No, I'm
yeah,
joking.
no, I'd rather not.
Okay.
I feel like I feel like we've gone on for a long time. But like Drew views for whatever reason he doesn't deserve to live a happy life. And this kind of mindset goes on for a long time. And then you have natural disasters start happening in your area. You have flooding, you have tornadoes, you have all this stuff. And then you might view in your head that just like you see all these natural disasters that are happening. This is because I don't deserve to have a happy life. You are taking something internal in yourself and putting it on something external that is happening outside of your control. Godzilla was going to attack Ginza whether or not Koichi was there or not, regardless. It did not matter. And I think that's the brilliance of like how they did his character and handled it, is that he, as soon as he starts to feel maybe a little better about himself, a negative event in life happens and he immediately like regresses
Yeah,
into that
relapse.
thinking of where it's just like, no, you have to realize that like everything that's happening, this isn't your fault. That's the thing, that's the key part, isn't it? Is like Godzilla is a force of nature. It isn't your fault that he's destroying Ginza. You do have to get out there and go out and face him and address it, but that doesn't mean you don't deserve a happy life. It doesn't mean that this is all your fault.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I view it.
Yeah. Getting on to Godzilla himself, because there is like a good period of time before we introduce the characters, we get to know them, we get to like them before we see Godzilla a second time. There's a brief scene where we see him like get nuked essentially, and that's why he gets bigger. But yeah, we see Godzilla again for the first time in his bigger form. And Randy, I'm gonna ask you this because you haven't talked about it. What do you think of Big Godzilla's design? He's scary because he's big.
I think he looks great.
I think he looks awesome, but I also love his like. He's got almost like a little like puppy dog nose. He's kind of got like a derpy face. I love him.
A little.
Yeah, and
I think it's the eyes. I think.
Yeah, I will say also before
It's
Seth
his
says
eyes,
it, I know a lot of his design is a reference to the original design. That's why he kind of walks a little funny because he almost looks again like a guy in a suit because that's how he was originally designed. But yeah, Reddy, what are your thoughts on his design and his appearance this much later in the movie?
I mean, I think he looks fantastic in
Hmm.
regards to, yes, he does look a little just barely rubber suitish, and I think that's mostly in the face when he's kind of like not like getting ready to shoot his heat ray or like roaring or something. It is kind of a little stagnant. It doesn't have like with modern Godzilla, I feel like the little intricacies of like I guess not face, but sure, we'll say face, like face movements over
Yeah.
expression. It's a little more stunted. But other than that, like the actual detail on the body is I think really well done. And when he does roar, get ready to shoot, dude, when he gets ready to shoot his heat ray, I'm just
Hmm.
like it's like the most badass thing. Like it's
It
badass
is.
in regards to like it looks amazing, but it's also like horrific because of the amount of destructive power it has.
Yeah, the fact that it
So
puts the mushroom cloud again, and uh,
yeah,
I
it's
love
literally
the
like
detail.
representing the
Yeah,
atomic bomb,
yeah, exactly. Just really
the
keeps
amount of
pushing forward
destructive
that
force.
metaphor. And I love the detail,
Yeah.
like right before he shoots, of like his back arching out and like that pistons like coming out through his back and glowing, so everyone knows. And they'll push down right before everything spews out and
Goes off,
just
yeah.
yeah goes up. That's super great.
The
Speaking of
dorsal
that,
fins, yeah, like just like closing in.
yeah.
Um,
Speaking of that, like that attack onto into the city, I also will say because I wrote my notes as well. Shout out to the reporters who were still working even as the monster's attacking, and
oh,
there's
dude,
even a
yeah,
line
no
that
way.
goes. It is not saying where we are standing, we are going to die. Like, still doing his broadcaster voice. Like, he doesn't start screaming until they're essentially off air and, like,
Until the building is
yeah, the
literally like
building's literally
falling.
falling. Like Godzilla's looking right at him, and he's like, "Godzilla is looking right in our face. Oh my gosh, the building is
He
going
is
down."
coming this way.
Yeah.
It's
God,
going.
that part is so.
I love
Especially
that
if you
guy.
work in news, you're just like, no way in hell. Then, like, absolutely not.
I
Next
respect the
shot.
dedication. I respect the dedication from that man. But yeah, hell
Um,
no, we're not doing that.
um, I will say, you guys are talking about like the Godzilla design, and I think one of the impressive things is like, oh, he does look like a bit of a rubber suit. The impressive thing is, I think I'm not entirely sure about Shin Godzilla if that was the last movie that used a suit. I'm not entirely sure, but I do know for sure Godzilla Minus One is one of, if not the first movie where Godzilla is entirely CGI. So the fact that he is a CGI monster the whole film, but there are moments where it is like, is that a practical effect or is that
Yeah, it really does look
Yeah.
like that looks practical.
the part that gets me, and it's one of my favorite sequences. I mean, actually, this whole movie is just chock full of favorite sequences. Honestly,
That's fair.
is the Jaws moment where
Yeah.
they're on the boat and like Godzilla chase them. Apparently, Steven Spielberg watched Godzilla Minus One and he loved it, and it's very clear that they drew some inspiration from Jaws there. I love it. There's something so menacing, especially since this is a bigger Godzilla. But I talked about like sort of the fear of the first form that you saw on Odo Island at the beginning of the film is the intimacy of the violence. Like it's very targeted and directed. Them being on this boat and you have Godzilla chasing you and you can see his beady eyes just targeting them is like unnerving. It genuinely unnerving, like seeing this creature moving towards them. It's
Yeah,
like, oh
Chase.
my God.
Yeah.
I oh, it's so good. It's such a great like suspenseful scene. I
That's,
love that so
yeah, this is the
much.
first time in a while I've like a movie has shown me Godzilla's pupils and his like round white eyes. Like, oh yeah, this sucks. And also,
It,
yeah,
it's
I was so surprised. Like, there's a specific shot where, like, literally the boat's going away, and you just see like his snout and like the top of Godzilla's head, and I was like, oh, that's a. I legit like always say like, oh, that's like a prop? That's like a little boat they build to like chase them.
oh yeah,
Um,
you would think that.
it's not. That's CGI.
which is insanely impressive,
Yeah,
especially
yeah,
considering the budget. Another detail that you touched on is the atomic breath. So most of the time with Godzilla's atomic breath, it is a prolonged beam or a like breath of fire in most films. Here they did something very different, but I think I like it a lot because it, in a way, it's more accurate to the atomic bomb. It is like just a sudden, just forceful like output of energy. Like it just he just shoots out. He just it's not a beam really anymore. He just shoots it out, and there's just a massive explosion, and it's all over in like a second.
yeah.
And and all you're left with is just the destruction of it all, and it's like holy god. Like I think it sells the horror of it. This I thought it was funny. Oppenheimer came out the same year as Godzilla Minus One, both films that kind of touch on the horrors of like nuclear weaponry and the capacity for that violence. And I think Godzilla Minus One touches on it much in the same way that Oppenheimer does. Now Oppenheimer kind of builds it up more. And like there's a like more slow motion shots of the fire, but it's the sudden flash. It's just the utter destruction and like just wiping everything out. Um, Whereas like Oppenheimer seemed to be showing the destruction on like a molecular level, if that makes sense. Because of the abstractness of like the close-ups of the
Yeah.
explosions and the weird visions that Oppenheimer would have. And then Godzilla Minus One is like just showing the raw destruction.
Yeah.
Um,
I have
a neat detail. Go
no.
ahead.
I was just gonna completely ruin your point forever. Because I have in my notes, Godzilla doesn't really have an atomic beam anymore. He just has an atomic hawk 2. Because he
No.
just spits.
Yeah, I mean that's
'Cause
basically
'cause
what
it's
it
not
is.
a beam. It's just a quick, like it's a loogie that he spits at that blows up.
The
So
the
Godzilla's
the
got that.
loogie of death,
Yeah,
the atomic
Godzilla's got that
loogie.
atomic hawk.
Oh.
Twa.
Oh no.
If only that meme came out earlier.
Oh, that would be great. Go ahead.
Yeah, only if.
Yeah. Yeah. Why couldn't the world have been blessed with that sooner?
I mean, yeah, no, I agree 100%. That is exactly what it is. Um, but yeah, like I love the look of this Godzilla. Like he is. It's funny. He's still not the biggest Godzilla. I think that still goes to, in terms of live action, legendary still. But he's not the biggest Godzilla. Hell, he's not even big like Shin Godzilla was in 2016. Like nowhere near as big. But it's just he's just so violent and angry in his design. Like
I think there's also something that says a lot about like he's not the biggest or like and he's moving pretty slow, but the fact that it's this Godzilla in this time period where like it's not like super or like there's still like guns like technology. Obviously we've made the nuclear weapon. But it's like early enough where it's like you can't scramble like, you know, jet fighters and like a million tanks and like all like we don't have modern weaponry to fight them. Like we still have like destroyers and like B planes, but like you look at the very little those things do, you get the sense of just like helplessness like so easily. Like
Yeah.
after that first attack of just he just riffs through a destroyer and then he goes to the city and just smacks it to the ground like nothing touches him.
yeah, the destroyer scene especially was, I think, the one that was the most like horrific and visceral for me personally, just because like you're seeing the desperation a little bit on both sides. Obviously, Godzilla is absolutely winning it, but like whenever he's like doing the destroyer, like he's not just ripping it all apart in one go. Like he's like manhandling it and just doing these big punches into the sides of this thing. And even as the boat is sinking down, it is point blank firing those massive guns into Godzilla. And it's like the horror of it is like you're just seeing these two things just even in their death throes. Well, really the death throes of the destroyer
Yeah.
trying to just
Godzilla's
kill
fine.
each other. And just the horror of it where like whenever the guns go off that point blank on Godzilla, he seems to finally go down, and that's when we actually get the first atomic the atomic loogie with the first time where we don't even see Godzilla, you just see the ocean glow blue for a moment and just like bam, destroyer's gone, like nothing left. It's like holy
Yeah.
shit. Like I I love the visceralness of this Godzilla. It's just so good.
All right. Unless anyone else has more to say on the, I guess technically second attack of the movie. Uh, yeah, we'll go into
So
yeah.
I will say just it's because in the second attack of the movie is where um let me back up, get her name right, Noriko, where
Hmm.
it's presumed that she gets killed. But
Yes.
so just a little bit before that, I know we already did touch a little bit on the PTSD, but just to also just add into like this is a good fucking movie, is that was one, well, not the one only time, because it did happen later at the end of the movie, and we'll talk about it when we get there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that was the first point in the movie where it actually did make me shed a couple little tears. And yes, I fucking cried during a Godzilla movie. Like, what the fuck? Where he talks about, he tells Noriko, like, she's like, why are you, like, thinking you're undeserving of this? And he's like, talks about how he fled his duty and then all those people died and, like, all this guilt on it. I just wanted to reiterate that it's like, you can cry at a Godzilla movie. This movie has depth.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Please watch it.
I definitely teared up a couple of times at this film. I absolutely agree with you, Randy.
Good.
Yeah.
Um,
The scene that like definitely that scene, and then like immediately after the attack when he's just sitting
Where he
there
goes,
in the
so I
rain
can't
of.
be happy.
Oh no, I wasn't talking about that.
Oh,
No, I meant when
immediately
he's
after the
sitting
attack
there in the
before he goes
rain of
home.
blood, and he's
Yeah,
screaming
that
into the
too.
sky.
so funny enough, that is actually that is not blood. That is ash. So this is a real thing. Whenever the atomic bombs went off, there was a phenomenon that happened in Japan called black rain, where basically the explosion and all the ash got up into the atmosphere and mixed in with like the clouds and the storm systems. So for sometimes months, you would have irradiated ash rain. Rain down on Japan, and it was called Black Rain. So that is a real detail. Is like, admittedly, maybe didn't happen that fast, I don't think, but that the detail of like Koichi kind of crying out after Godzilla's like atomic breath there, that's real. The Black Rain. Um,
Yeah,
just more fun, traumatizing stuff you get to learn about with nuclear weapons.
it's such a cool such a cool shot. Such just
Yeah, it's a great.
gut punch.
Um, just in general, the actors, we've been talking about the PTSD. Something I don't usually pay attention to, and it really got me, is the body language and camera framing with some of the actors' movements. They're like, I can't remember specifically which scene because I think there's a couple where Koichi is kind of like has his friends over and has with Noriko, and he like hits like a moment where he's like, I shouldn't be happy. There's those moments where Koichi kind of starts to walk out of frame and the camera follows him and he starts to like hold the sides of his arms and like kind of like clutches himself. I What gets me is how much he both with the actor's body language and with the camera framing of the shot, just how small he becomes. And it's
Yeah.
Yeah.
like,
He's
oh,
so
it's
like hunched
so
over and like his posture gets worse and like visibly worse. He's all like almost like how you look if you have like a stomach ache. You get all like curled up.
but he just shrinks into the corner. Yeah. And it's like, oh, that's so fucking sad, dude. Um but it's really good. Like I said, I feel like there's so much to talk about this film, like from Godzilla to the characters and the acting, but like the acting all around the board, even from the most minor of side characters, is just stellar in this film. Like it's so fucking good, especially from Koichi's actor. Like I think he does such a great job.
Yeah.
Um
Interesting enough, as we kind of start moving into basically the reaction of this and like when the plan is, we'll get back to like the actual plan in that scene with like all the guys. But just on note, because we're talking about his posture, if you noticed, once after that moment and they start forming a plan and he hears about like, oh, we just need a mechanic to like fix the plane. You notice in the film his posture actually is more upright and he like stands kind of like straighter up, other than like when he's knocked down. because now he has a purpose because he's it's terrible, but he sees a path that leads to his death. He sees a way to sacrifice himself and to make his death mean something. And now he's standing up straight because he's like, I gotta do this. I can end it. I can find a way to like put
He's
it to an end.
Unfortunately he starts to act more like a soldier again, I
Yeah,
think, and it's like
he's
it's
basically out
horrifying.
of tension essentially,
Hmm.
but it's awful. But yeah,
No, that's a great catch.
yeah.
God.
But yeah, the aftermath of the thing, and we've already touched on a little bit of like there is no real military that's coming to help him. It has to be a civilian effort to kill Godzilla, and yeah, that whole scene of just like trying to convince these men to like, hey, not to lay down your life because that's a very different detail up to just like we have to fight this thing and kill it, but we're going to do it better than the war. We're going to do it and make a plan where everyone gets to go home and we're not going to make it do it. And I'm going to it's a whole montage and a bunch of different things happen, but I wanted to hark on one thing, and I think Seth, this is the speech that you were talking about, your favorite moment. It's the this is not a fight to the death. This is a fight to live scene, like right before the attacks. This is, I guess, technically the Doctor's second speech. When like right when Godzilla is found out again, that he talks to the people, and someone asks like or he tells them, hey, go home, spend as much time with your family as possible. And they're like, should we prepare them for the worst? And that's when he gives this speech. It was like, no, if this plan works, everyone goes home. We are not sacrificing people to make it easier on us.
Yeah, dude, that's like I have to go into it because it's the
Yeah.
specifics that he gets into. He talks about like how they would mass issue like faulty rifles, armor that didn't real the like tanks with armor that didn't really protect their crew.
Yeah.
The part really get obviously it's alluding to what's going to happen in the film, but planes built
But
without ejector seats. It's like the idea of like, the military and the government having such little regard for basic human life for its own soldiers. And he's like, we're not doing like you said, we're not doing it that way. Um, I'm gonna steal a line from from Captain America. We're not trading lives.
yeah.
And it's like that's exactly what this felt like. It's like, oh my God, like it hits so good because like I said, it's hitting on real historical stuff too that people had to deal with that like that is true like with like the Japanese government like what they did to their own soldiers, the situations they put them in. They quite literally sent these heaps of young men to die. Um it's such a powerful and like in my opinion like just such a human and touching like monologue from the Doctor, and I love it so much.
Yeah. Um, Getting back to the actual plan that was formed, because like you said, you can't use conventional weapons. They have to do this unconventional way of dropping to the bomb, letting surface pressure killing, and then resurfacing back up. Robert, I wanted to ask you this because this was your very first time seeing the movie. Did you
Yeah.
find the plan incredibly confusing, like when it was explained and when it was executed, or did you follow it the entire way through?
I could kind of follow like the gist of it
Yeah,
because it was basically they wanted to like sink Godzilla so quickly it would possibly crush him, and then if that failed, to try to like I the part I didn't really quite understand was like sending him back up that quickly. Like what was
So
that going to accomplish?
I can explain a bit of the science on this one. So so this is something that happens a lot with divers is you are dealing with different pressures at different levels of like water. Um, a lot of times with divers, they urge you need to be careful about going down and going up at the correct pressures because obviously you go down with like pressure, it gets like stronger as you go up, it gets lighter. What kills a lot of divers is they start to surface too quickly. Their body doesn't adjust quickly enough and it
Yeah,
kills them so many times. I think what you're
yeah,
seeing is that on a bigger scale.
I got you. Yeah, it's I remember something about like where when divers have to like resurface, they have to gradually ascend, like how they have to gradually descend.
Yep, like 30 to 40 minutes taken at a time to go up because like I said,
Yeah,
go too quickly, it will kill you.
Okay, yeah, that makes more sense.
But see, that's the best part about this. It's not about conventional weapons defeating Godzilla. And I always love this in like when they do this in Godzilla movies. How they're gonna beat Godzilla is not through the use of weapons, but through motherfucking science. And it's like, oh, I love that.
It's science, bitch.
It's like
That's
listen to your fucking scientist, and it's just like I love that so much that like that this film, I think they do it in a way that feels believable enough that just like okay, you have these ballasts that like can like ascend and descend really quickly and you can just build them out like quickly. It's like yes, it's a movie, how realistic is it, but like I think the science is plausible enough here that you can buy into it. And I just love that so much using the deep ocean where Godzilla usually hides out as a way to defeat him is so I think it's great.
Yeah, I will say it is, and I agree with Robert. The first time like you're describing it, and in film's credit, they do actually take the time to like describe the science to it, but it is a bit confusing of just like of like yeah, bringing him back up will basically do this or reverse the thing, and like also put him under incredible pressure on a
yeah.
second viewing, and also like now that like I kind of get the science, it makes more sense. But yeah, I also agree that it's like I like that. Yeah, it's science and like smart thinking that takes it out. Speaking of the final,
Just
and
like
this
the
is
original
in
film.
the yeah, this is in the I believe it's like during like one of the montages of like doing it, and also like the last one. I'm pretty sure Seth, you can correct me on this if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure the theme of like that ending like that's playing is just an upbeat and up tempo version of the traditional Godzilla theme.
Uh
I think
it's
so,
hard for I don't
or it
think
might be
so. I've listened
sampled
to
a
it.
bit or something.
Um
Yeah.
I think it feels it does have like a very similar vibe as like Godzilla's March. By the way, yes, of course I did the thing that's like I saw it and they did it and I clapped. Although I didn't clap when they
I
played the
pointed and I
Godzilla.
clapped.
Yeah, like when they
I got you. I got
when
you
they
with the
just
quote.
yeah, thank you. When they blasted the Godzilla like march whenever he comes into Ginza, like oh my God, that reveal is so good. Like him in the train window revealing. So that theme is called Resolution in the soundtrack, where it's like. Dun, 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 like the kind of like
Yeah.
constantly building and it throws more stuff into it, but you still have that same like consistent like leitmotif kind of running throughout the song. Um, I it feels very Godzilla-esque, but like I think I remember telling this to you before you went and saw Minus One, and I believe this now, and I'm just so happy I get to say this publicly now, is that Godzilla has his own classic theme, of course, that is Ifukube's Godzilla's March. It's been around since the first film. I feel like this film, they finally gave a human equivalent resolution where it's like this as the song gets more chaotic and it's more thrown in, you still get that consistent beat moving forward. And it's just this building sense that like humanity coming together to face this threat uh head on. And it's like I love resolution so much. It's like it honestly kind of beats out almost the Godzilla main theme for me just because it's like thematically what it does and it brings to everything is just so good. I love Resolution so much. Like it really is the song of like people coming together to face impossible odds. And it's like, god damn, it's so good. It's so damn good. Um
Yeah.
Sorry, was there anything more you want to talk about with the
No, I
music?
mean, no, that was. I mean, that was basically. I just know it sounded very similar. Like not similar in the way of like, oh, it's just the same music. But I was like, maybe it's sampled the same or something. But it sounds like
It could be.
it
It
sounds
definitely
so
could be.
like reminder, to, like almost like directly challenging the other theme. And maybe I was reading too much into it, but it felt like maybe it's the same. It's just faster tempo, and maybe that's what it is. But I don't know. That's why I didn't know if that was true or not.
I
But
think now you pointed out, I think about it's like I think you're right. Like there's a more ascending theme to Resolution. It's like dun 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 dun, dun and it builds up where Godzilla's main dun 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 dun
yeah, it's
dun
like the other
no no
one's
no
faster
no no no.
paced.
Like it's
The
more
other one's
and it's
faster
more
paced and in a higher
downbeat.
key. Yeah, one's higher, one's high
Yeah,
key, one's low key. Like
yeah. So like I
they sound so
can see
similar.
that. That could I definitely do believe where I don't know they directly sample it. I do believe your theory where it's like I think they are meant to be contrasting themes. Like
Yeah.
absolutely they're it's meant to be in direct competition with each other.
No,
So,
no, but I think that that film was great. A few other notes as
one
I.
thing since
Oh,
we're talking to oh,
yeah, go ahead.
sorry.
No,
I
no,
just
no.
wanted to
Talk
bring
about the
this
music
up.
because I was about to
Uh
transition away from it.
oh, not the music, but the montage scene that you mentioned.
Yeah.
So, they one of the things they reveal is the prototype plane, the Shinden. Um This is a real prototype plane that Japan did build, but it was never used in the war. As they mentioned in the movie, it was not used in the war. Um, in particular, these Shinden planes were designed to intercept bombers. Bombers like the ones that drop atomic
Mm,
bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I think it's very I think it was a very smart choice for them to use that specific plane is Koichi, where it's like you couldn't stop the war like the planes were originally designed to do, but you can stop this monster here with it. And it's like, man, it's so it's so good. Like I said, all like the historical elements that they pull on in this film, like it's just another little neat detail on top of like a film filled with like good historical details in it. So
yeah.
I love that so much.
No, and I really do like the final fight where it's basically Godzilla fighting a fly and getting just pissed off at it and ignoring the rest of the city. Um, yeah, I like the plan, even though it doesn't. There's a moment where it doesn't really make sense of like the idea that like we got all these like fishermen tugboats, let's go, and they somehow just within the matter of in the matter of a jump cut, attach all these fishing lines to these boats immediately, like within seconds. Like,
Oh yeah.
now that would take to get all those boats onto one ship that I'm pretty sure might just like rip the front off. That would take like the better part of the day. And at that point, if it takes
It's just
this,
something you gotta just do suspension of disbelief
yeah,
on.
I was
Yeah,
saying
I
it's like
think
at that point, it was just so I know it's like, well, that's
So
whatever. Who
they're
cares?
they're
Yeah,
fighting a giant sea monster. Why are you hung up on the fishing boats?
because it's my immersion, Robert. You know how long it takes to
Hey,
set up a tugboat,
I love
and then
I
also
love the
like get
tugboat
half
scene.
of them to the other side and explain the plan to those guys. At that
I
point,
love
if
the
it take this
tugboat
long to
scene.
do it, Godzilla probably is dead at this point. He's stuck.
I love the tugboat scene because it is basically the equivalent of like the Spider-Man from Amazing Spider-Man and the original Spider-Man scene of like New York coming in. It's like you
Yeah.
mess with one of us, you mess with all of us.
Yeah.
It's just like
Uh,
it for some reason it gave me the same vibes as like Amazing Spider-Man when like the crane operators like
yeah,
all like
I feel that.
aligned.
Oh,
The
no,
crane
come on.
operators. Oh god.
Oh my god. No, I thought that I got a kick out of it. It's both a moment that like I recognize it's like it's a bit stupid, but also like I thought it was hype. It was also a cool way to bring like the
Yeah.
kid back into the film of like he's doing his part. You know, it's
Yeah.
like all right,
I'm
cool
doing
shit.
my part.
Yeah,
Uh,
but I'm not gonna lie. I did get immediate flashbacks. It's like, oh, the crane scene, the crane scene. From the
I
Spider-Man.
was assuming it was fun.
Yeah.
But no, my favorite part by far of that entire fight is when he finally flies the plane into his mouth. How it just kunk, and then blows up. It doesn't blow up immediately. It gets stuck in his mouth because like, yeah, that probably is how that would work. It would the bomb would actually blow up immediately. And I love that. I love that, and like you can see Godzilla's like immediate reaction after getting and, like random like, what is it? Boom. I love it.
Best way to kill Godzilla.
And
I
Kilo
I
quotation.
really like I love the flight scene though with
Mhm.
Koichi. The POV shots inside the cockpit with him and just like the music swelling and him like swooping down on like Godzilla. I do like the detail that they point out is just like you have to fly in close to Godzilla that way he can't use his breath.
Yeah.
Um because like it's just too close quarters for him. It's like that's fucking smart. I really like that. But like this, the music swelling, and it's like, listen, no one is gonna be there's no one human being is gonna be able to 1v1 Godzilla, but I think this is the closest you can get. And it's like, and I thought it was done like masterfully. I think there's just so much tension in that scene too. Like not
Oh
just
yeah.
can Koichi fight Godzilla, but like at this point, like I'm sure by now everybody picked up like, oh, there's definitely an ejector seat in the plane because
Yeah.
the movie makes so many allusions to it. Um, but it's still that part still gets me with the reveal of it. Um,
It's a really well done reveal.
oh yeah, it's so good. And but the part is like we're still not sure where Koichi is in his headspace of like, is he gonna do the right thing or is he, is he gonna throw it all away? Like I felt like I never felt it was not so much I was worried that Godzilla was gonna kill him. I was more worried of like, is Koichi all right, dog? Like it's like
He's gonna kill himself.
like he's like, hey, bro. Like, I
They're
like how
asking where's Koichi, but they don't ask how's Koichi.
Yeah.
they
So,
kind of, the captain is just like, hey, he's like sort of joking. It's like, hey, you better not leave your girl an
joking
orphan,
around,
and he doesn't answer
he
back.
yells at him, I swear to God, if you leave that girl alone, I will kill you.
Yeah, he's just like, hey, man, it's like you better
He's
not be
not
fucking
joking.
with me
He's
right
like,
now.
you are going to be a dad and you're going to fucking like it.
He's not responding
Oh,
on the
like-
comms. He better not be trying to kill
Oh,
himself.
I
Yeah.
think at first it's a little bit like a joke, but when he doesn't respond, he's like, hey, man, this is not funny.
This isn't... He essentially done like the meme of just like, would you get a I love you bro text at 3 in the morning, you gotta start running. Like, oh shit. Oh, no.
Oh god,
But
that's
I love
funny.
it. Yeah, and I also do love that moment where like, after like the guy that hates Koichi almost as much as Koichi hates himself, the mechanic like grabs him by like the shoulder and there's an ejector seat, and he's like, you put a what in? He's like, you're gonna live, because he's like, he finally realized like it's not your fault. Like
Dude, the fact that the engineer dude is absent for most of the film, and he just like kills it with like the
Yeah.
emotion. I'm just like, oh my god, dude. Like that's what I mean. Like
Yeah, when he
every
hears
side
over the
character-
comms that like he ejected, he's just like, oh thank God. And like his I don't know, his facial emotion there is very well acted.
you feel it. There's
Yeah.
so many good scenes, like including the one where like he finally comes out of hiding and just starts beating the shit out of Koichi, even with a bum leg. It's just like, oh my god, it's so visceral. I
Because the
love
way Koichi got him out of hiding, which like to be fair it worked, sent him letters that basically said it's your fault, not mine, that all those people are dead. Like, whoa. What a...
I mean, it worked. It worked.
And he immediately was like, no, I was lying, but like, I need you to build this plane. Great. No, I
Oh,
love it.
man.
I think that ending's like beautiful. And now I do have a question, and I do want the whole cast to answer this. Is the actual like the ending, the last like 10 minutes. Koichi finally gets like a happy ending. It's like, oh my, and your wife's alive, like, and that, and then also this movie sets up for kind of a sequel where like, yeah, she's infected with the Wolverine Godzilla thing, and that's why she lived. So, two questions for you guys: how do you feel about sudden reveal that the wife's alive at the end, and would you want a sequel to this? Like, would you want this universe to continue? And ready, yeah. You can go
First off, I've been meaning to bring this up. They totally both could have fit in the alleyway. I don't know why she pushed them in.
Yeah,
Totally that made no sense.
Look,
It's
I'm not
just
saying
like,
exactly. It's suspension of disbelief. It's the same thing with the tugboats. It's just like, she needed to die here, and it's like, and it needed to be poetic for him.
listen, Drew. Like, listen. If you or me are out at like, let's say Nashville, and Godzilla attacks, first off, you are not shoving me, okay? I'm too heavy. like I will not make. Make it
the
into
wife
the
in this
alleyway.
scenario? I thought I was.
I don't.
No, because earlier you said I'm the one with the Survivors Guild. I'm the one that gets to survive. Yeah,
That's a
you're
good
the one
point.
shoving me into the alley.
And also, listen, I don't want to assume how we would operate in an emergency situation, but I would like to think with most of us here, we would have the idea of like, instead of just trying to like shove one person and try to face tank an atomic blast, we would both be like, get in the fucking alleyway. It's just like, let's
Fucking
go.
go.
What
And,
are you doing, man?
She looked.
what are you
She
doing?
looked,
Move.
she looked back at Godzilla and was like, "Nah, I'd win. I got get the fuck out of the way, husband. I got this shit."
I got this bastard.
This movie follows the rule: if you don't see them die, are they really dead?
Yeah. I suppose like I thought she was fucking dead. Just cause like
yeah, no. My
at
first
this
time
point
hearing
in
it, I
the
was
movie,
like,
all
they
the
showed-
destruction in Ginza. Like you see the aftermath of it, so you could feasibly believe, yeah, no, she's just fucking gone.
Bro,
Yeah,
you
at first
saw
I
the
did,
fucking,
but then-
like, wave of fire hit her. I was like, yeah, that's probably it.
Yeah, I definitely thought that too. Of course, until they started showing like, oh, there's a letter going around. It's like, oh fuck,
Oh,
she's
yeah,
alive.
Yeah, that was the lie. I was like, oh.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
I don't think
I
we,
was
yeah, Randy, go ahead.
yeah, we didn't give Randy actually an opportunity there.
I was like I was fine with it because like it's not the first time that there's been like some cheesiness and like I guess I didn't even necessarily find it as cheesy because I mean if you look at the way the blast goes off, it's less of it like they call it a heat ray, but like it looks like yeah, it's more like atomic bomb in the center,
Atomic.
but then
Cloud.
after that it's mostly like a massive shockwave.
Yeah.
So, albeit unlikely, it's more of like having a building fall on you. So, like, unlikely that you'll survive. Very unlikely. Possible.
Or yeah, I mean,
Maybe.
there's even like crazy ass stories out there where highly unlikely, but like people picked up by tornadoes and survive.
Yeah, so I'm
Wild
like,
shit.
I guess it's not impossible. And they even, like, in the news report after the attack on the city, they're like, yeah, some 30,000 people are died and or injured. So, like, she was just injured and they couldn't find the body, so they're like, well, she's dead.
Injured or missing,
But
yeah,
isn't-
and
don't
that's
they actually like because they do something? Oh, I'm trying to.
They have a
remember.
funeral for her.
No,
so.
not that. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like in the movie, like they do, like it's like on the back of her neck. It's like she's like infected with.
Oh, yeah, we'll get there. We'll
Yeah.
get there.
oh yeah, we'll get there.
So I was like, I think that's
But,
the reason she survived.
But yeah, like I didn't really care as much that like she survived or like I cared that she survived because finally Koichi got to finally have like a happy ending. Just finally getting there with Akio
Mhm.
and being like one happy family and like seeing how his reaction to finally seeing her alive and her just asking, is your war finally over? Tears again.
Yeah.
So that was the second part where I was like, I like lit a couple tears out. I was just like, damn, they're acting so good.
Yeah,
Like
heard-
I'm very much believing about at the first time about when he's like having to struggle and talk about this burden he's carrying to her and how he's like, I should be the one dead. Maybe this is actually all the dream or whatnot. Like, and I'm still just rotting on that beach. To then finally going all the way to seeing her again alive, and he's there with his daughter and his
buddies.
Noriko, just finally seeing her alive and just like breaking down and being like, I thought you were gone. I thought I lost absolutely everything. And I'm just like, I'm feeling emotions.
it hits you like a
Yeah.
freaking freight train. That's why I'm okay with like and then suddenly she's alive, just because I'm like, this man earned a happy ending, and it hit you so hard of just like, oh, he's happy, yeah, like it's such a feel good moment of just like, it feels like almost like a breath of fresh air of like finally this man can have a semblance of happiness, and the big monster's dead and he has his wife again. Like, yes, and that feeling's great. So I'm okay with that. I have thoughts about like the other thing, but yeah,
it's kind of like that they put the main characters through so much bullshit that it's like you do feel like by the end of it, it's like they've earned a happy ending. Please
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
please just give it to them. Yeah.
Okay.
I
Wait.
think another thing that it like kind of touches on too is like it's that theme of like continuing to live on even when you feel like there's no reason to. Because if Koichi did, I think that's the key part of why they like why no one got over the phone and told Koichi like, "Oh, your Noriko's alive," so that maybe it would change his mind. I think it's a key point of like, even without knowing that he chose to live, and that's not trying to say it was rewarded, but like that's what he could have missed out on if he gave up his life. It's just like that's a reason to continue. Is like you never know what might come your way.
Yeah. But yeah,
Yeah,
Robert, we
definitely.
haven't heard you talking. Well, what's your thought on, you know, the missus being alive in the very end?
Yeah. I think it was a really well done reveal. It almost feels earned just because it's like, he's taken he fulfilled his mission. The war's over in his head. Now he gets to have his happy ending.
Yeah.
It's like I don't think it was a bad reveal at all.
No. Um, but the second thing that happened at the reveal is her little like Godzilla barking, and then it goes down in the water, and it's like, oh, maybe he's still alive, like he's still regenerating. And I'm gonna be completely
No,
honest.
there's no way they killed Godzilla there.
I'm gonna be completely honest though. As I love this movie, I think this movie's phenomenal. I think it's incredibly well acted. I think it's great. I don't want a sequel. I don't want this to
Mm.
stay. If you do something else, don't you stay away from Koichi. Stay away from all these people. They've dealt with enough bullshit in their life. Leave them alone. Uh, and I love
That's
this
fair.
movie
Yeah.
so much, but like, if you do another thing with Godzilla, like, I guess it's not so much that I don't want a sequel. I don't want any of these characters to be in it because like I feel like this is such a good contained story, and I don't think you need anything more. Like I don't want to like not everything needs to be a franchise. Not everything needs to be like connected into a big universe. Like not everything needs to be Marvel. I think I want this to like stay as like a solid, really well done, just in right here Godzilla universe. It has a very incredibly strong beginning, middle, and phenomenal ending that makes you feel great. And I'm okay with it
Mm.
just being. If they do another sequel with Godzilla, with this version of Godzilla, I'm fine with it. I just don't want these characters. But I feel like honestly, if you put it in a different time period, it can be done, but it's a different message. Like it won't be the World War II metaphor or anything. It'll have to be a bit more modern. Um, but yeah,
Maybe. Yeah.
what are your guys' thoughts? And that's also why I don't really like the whole like she has like the thing on the back of her neck. I was like, I don't leave them out of this, please.
Well,
Such a
yeah,
stupid
no, I
thing.
feel you on that. I think Minus One is a great like just standalone film. Um, I will say, don't you don't have to worry too much about like I would still say a sequel is still up in the air. I don't know if it's still like decided because funnily enough, I talked about Shin Godzilla from 2016, which was a reboot of Godzilla, also had and that was a really well received film too. That movie also had like a sort of sequel baity sort of end. And they never made a sequel to that movie. Um, so all because Toho teases some stuff doesn't necessarily mean it's gonna come to pass. So I will put that out there. Um, that being said, I kind of in a I'm in a weird space where I really love Minus One, and honestly, if they said we're moving on to other versions of Godzilla, we feel that this movie is good by itself. We're not going to touch it again. I'd be like, that's fine by me. That's great. I think as a standalone film, I think it's amazing. It doesn't need to. But if they do make a sequel, as long as I feel like they can justify like, because I feel like, never say never. And I feel like as long as like the writers and the team behind it can justify a good sequel to this movie, then my ass will be in the seat. I'll definitely watch it. But then again, it's Godzilla. I'll watch just about anything with
Yeah.
Godzilla in it. But I agree with you, Drew, where I think like this is definitely like I love Godzilla to death, and I think all the movies have something nice and worth watching. I'm a big fanboy of it, but I will say minus one, I do think is on a higher caliber of Godzilla films compared to the rest. Um, like I said, I don't think a sequel would ruin that rating. I just think, you know, I trust the team. If they do decide to revisit it, I do trust that they would have a good reason to do that. Um, so yeah,
Man,
I feel that.
I don't. Maybe, I think it's just me. I don't really see the story beyond this because it's so self-contained. I would love to be proven wrong. I would love to be different. Randy, what are your thoughts? Would you want a sequel of this? And if the answer is yes, why? If the answer is, or I guess if the answer is yes, what would you want to see? But if the answer is no, why?
So I'm kind of on the fence because
Yeah.
I definitely understand what you were getting at in regards to if they do a sequel, it'll have to be like decades later and like leave this family alone and
Mhm.
like um I think it would still be done in in Japan. So I think, keep the Japan setting, don't like bring it to like America or something like that. Um but at the same time I kind of want to know what's up with like this radiation marking or whatever that she has on her neck. I kind of want to
Oh
know
man.
what's going on with that.
I can give you some ideas because this is not the first time we've had something like this tease, and it's yeah, there I could, if you want to, I could share what it potentially could be.
Sure, yeah, because
Um,
like I have no idea what it is, and like you said, like just because Soho teased something in Shin Godzilla doesn't mean that anything's gonna come from it.
Right. So I'll draw a couple of different Godzilla films. So Shin Godzilla's Ending and Godzilla versus Biollante, which came out like in the 80s. So in Shin Godzilla, how that Godzilla they treated is that he was a constantly evolving life form, that he was adapting to whatever's being thrown at him. And it was like he was basically adapting to his environment and becoming sort of the ultimate like kind of life form. They don't say it like that because that's some anime
All right,
sounding
Shadow the
bullshit.
Hedgehog.
Yeah, I know. But but so Godzilla goes through these different phases and they kind of stop him at the end, but what it shows at the very end of the film is they go to his tail and they show very creepy Godzilla slash human hybrids like coming out of his tail. Like they had stopped it just in time. It's like, oh, so the next form would be Godzilla birthing these like creepy human Godzilla hybrids to take over the world. It's like and you should
Never
look
mind,
up
I don't want a sequel.
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
one of them. So that's one thing. The other thing, and I'm gonna say this, and it's gonna sound cheesy, but in the film, it's actually done really well in terms of like the characters is Godzilla versus Biollante. So in that film, there is a scientist who is testing, who wants, I think he's trying to cure his daughter or something. So he's using a combination of plant cells and Godzilla's like stem cells or something to try to cure his daughter. So he injects it into his daughter. However, his daughter being injected with the Godzilla cells and the plant cells, they sort of morph together and they create this horrific plant monster thing, Biolante, which basically turns into a whole big monster that Godzilla has to fight. But all the while, the little girl is conscious of it happening to her. She is
Oh, that's
still
awful.
inside the monster, and basically it is. I think if I remember correctly, it's been a long time, but I think if I remember correctly in the movie, she pleads with Godzilla to kill her. Um, so that's another potential direction. Is like, oh yeah, against her will, she turns into an awful abomination. But I know that both options I presented don't sound great.
Yeah, I
Because you're
think
just like,
I might side with Drew on this one.
Yeah.
Maybe leave it
it's just,
alone.
yeah, it's
All of a
so like,
sudden,
yeah,
Drew's opinion wasn't that crazy. Maybe we just keep it like this.
yeah, because like I know, especially with the Biolante one, because it's in the film. I know it sounds very corny, 80s sci-fi, but if you watch the film, it's genuinely heartbreaking when all that stuff happened because they set it up so well. Um, and it's just like, God damn it, Koichi's been enough through already. Don't give him his wife just to take her away by turning her into like this horrendous, awful monster.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Like I said, I would still watch a sequel, but I agree that like the options being presented are like horrific. And
Yeah.
yeah, so
Yeah. Robert, before we start closing out, any thoughts for you on either a sequel or some other project with this world?
I'd be interested if they did something like that. I kind of prefer if it was just like, hey, there's like a little like tease at the end, but you could still kind of leave it open-ended. Because again, I don't think everything needs a sequel, and that's kind of what you see a lot in like the box office these days. Like the big stuff is like it's usually sequels and thing like that, and there's not a whole lot of like standalone stuff. Like yes, Godzilla is a franchise of movies, but not everything in the franchise has to be connected to one another, you know?
historically, yeah, that's the way it is with Godzilla. Is we've often gone through eras. Funnily enough, with this era in Japan, I mean, I know we had like the U.S. kind of covering the one Godzilla continuity, but we're in technically, I think the post-millennium era of Godzilla with Toho, and all it has been is just basically been kind of like one-offs or Godzilla doing his own thing. So like there was the 2016 Godzilla, Shin Godzilla, this one, there's some anime ones that they like tried to do. And all of those have always been just kind of like their own thing.
Yeah. So again, I'm not super familiar with like the Godzilla series. My only real exposure prior is like this one game I had on the Game Boy that was like a Godzilla like beat 'em up fighting game kind of thing. 'Cause it had like Godzilla, Mechagodzilla, Mothra, a few others I'm struggling to remember the names of.
Yeah, Jaguar.
Jet
That's fun.
Jaguar.
Seth is like, I know.
Yeah.
I
I just
actually
put
don't
them
know
off
about
the
this
Monster
Game Boy.
Center.
You
I,
know
I,
that
I
meme
actually
of
don't
just
know
like
anything about this Game Boy.
you know there's a
I
meme
can
of just
send you a
like
link to like a video on it or something, like a trailer after this.
you know the
Nice.
meme of
That'd be
like
funny.
that one person that's like, you name me 100 facts, I'll name you 100 birds. I'll name you 5 birds. I'll name you 100 birds. Like no one wants your bird fact. It's like that's what it says. Like you give me one Godzilla monster, I'll name you 100. I can give you a million Godzilla monsters. That we're like, no one
Oh,
cares about your Godzilla monsters. So you
there's
no.
so many. I'm still waiting for the American Godzilla to introduce Gigan with his like buzzsaw belly and his knife hands,
Which
or
one's
my
the
favorite,
which one's like the big turtle? I like that guy.
Gamera.
Yeah, look at that
He's
dude.
not in he's not in the Godzilla continuity. He's in his own thing.
Yeah, but he's cool. I want him. I like the big
He is
turtle.
Gamera, also known as the friend of children.
Yeah,
That was his title.
he likes, but like not like a Drake way. He likes kids. No, he's cool.
Yeah,
He also
yeah,
like he
he's cool.
puts all his arms and legs into his shell, then shoots his like atomic breath, and will like spin like a helicopter, and that's how he gets around everywhere.
Yeah,
Great.
like
What
that
the
that
fuck?
one that it was one movie he did that.
Yeah, but like
That's
that's
one
his
movie.
move. You know, like that's a
It's
Oh
cool.
god.
canon.
It's
Uh,
canon. Oh, I love
yeah.
him. Yeah, I want that. Yeah.
No, I mean that'd be funny, and plus also like all the way back then, Godzilla fans to this day and Gamera fans have wanted a Godzilla Gamera crossover. It's just never happened, surprisingly. We've got Godzilla versus Frankenstein, but not
Wait,
that.
what the
We have
okay.
Godzilla versus
No,
I think it's Shaq. I think it's who beat him in a basketball competition in a comic book.
was that a was oh okay
It was a
the
comic. It was like
book. I
a
was like,
one-off
was that
comic where
I
Shaq's
thought that was
dunking
like a
on
commercial.
Godzilla. It might have been a commercial.
God.
I think it might have been a commercial
Godzilla.
first and then a comic, but yeah, it's just it was the same people.
What a
that
franchise.
Yeah, it did us. It was the same people that did the comic of Muhammad Ali beating Superman in a boxing match. I love it. I love it. Okay, yeah, but that's enough. Yeah, that's
If
about
you
everything.
think that's crazy, hold on. In 1966, actually, there was they made they were but when they were really trying to profit off of Godzilla, they made like a bunch of movies. One movie that they tried to make, but it just fell through because it didn't happen in 1966 was there was going to be a Batman meets Godzilla film. Um,
Oh.
Mind you, 1966. We're talking this would have been Adam West Batman versus Godzilla.
Great Scott, Robin. He's about to give us a talk press.
Rock
Tua. Boom.
Robin, get me my anti-Godzilla spray.
Yeah. Godzilla, and then Godzilla sends the atomic loogie at him. Love it. All right, but I think that's about everything that we want to talk about with Godzilla Minus One. Obviously, if it wasn't obvious after the hour and a half of essentially just gushing about it, yeah, this movie's really freaking
Watch
good.
the movie.
Yeah, watch the movie.
It's a good movie.
It came out in December of last year, and like it just suddenly became my favorite movie of that year. It was, it just skyrocketed, and I knew it was gonna be good. I didn't expect to like love the characters, love everything. It's like one of the first Godzilla movies where I'm like, I want the people to not get crushed and just killed by Godzilla in the coolest way. Like it makes it scary. Like
Yeah, 99% of the time, like every single Godzilla movie I've watched, I'm like, I don't give a shit about these humans.
Yeah.
But this is the first time that I'm like, damn, I care so much about these humans.
I really want these humans to live. No, it's like there's a reason it stayed in theaters for multiple months after only supposed to being in theaters like 2 weeks. Like people love seeing this because it is a good Godzilla movie. It is just a good movie, period. Like even without Godzilla. So no, it's phenomenal, and it just kind of shows you that like, yeah, there are like people will appreciate like good work, like with films like this. Yeah. The more I say about it, the more I'll just be repeating myself from earlier. But again, phenomenal acting, phenomenal effects, just great all around cinema. Cue that one meme. But yeah, Seth, we'll save you for last. I know you got some stuff you want to say, but any closing thoughts from Robert or Randy? Randy, we can go with you first.
I don't think I have anything. I think we summed it up well, other than
Okay.
just go watch this movie.
All right, Robert, your turn.
So as a resident, never seen Godzilla before, I really enjoyed my time with this one. I
So
don't know where I would go with like watching a future Godzilla movies or just going back and watching ones I haven't seen.
You probably
Like,
don't need to
from,
see
like,
any more
just-
than this. Just yeah, right side, just end.
Hey, fuck you.
Yeah,
Yeah, just
sorry.
I thought it was a really well told story. I liked the monster fights. Like the scenes where Godzilla was on screen was all just some of the coolest shit. And yeah, like I don't know, I just really enjoyed watching this one.
All right.
Cool.
Your turn, Seth.
Hey, listen. I know Godzilla. Like, here's the thing. I love all the Godzilla films. I completely understand that. Like, some people are like, yeah, I don't think I can handle like going watching the cheesy ones. Listen, ask me. Give me some time. I can get you a couple of recommendations of Godzilla films that maybe not hit as hard as like Minus One did for a lot of you, because that's like your first real good Godzilla film, and that one always sticks with you. But I got a list. Like obviously, after watching this, even though it does have like some of the cheese and the sci-fi-ness and all this, I still recommend, of course, Godzilla versus Biollante. That one I really do recommend a lot. So yeah, if you want to, I can guys send you like a sort of like list of like, hey, if you like this Godzilla film, here's a couple of others that you might enjoy. I'm just for me, there's just a wonderful sense of gratification where I have been a Godzilla fan practically all my life, since I was a young kid. And while he is in the mainstream, I think it's a little sad whenever it's like a lot of people are sort of like only looking at the surface of like what Godzilla offers and kind of dismissive, like, oh, it's like hokey science and it's like goofy and like, the human characters don't matter. And I would say like there's a lot of movies where it definitely earns that reputation, but there's also a lot of other movies that manage to defy that. And it just makes me so happy to see new people getting into Godzilla. And I hope it's a gateway to more people embracing one of my favorite film characters. Hey, we're one of the longest existing fandoms in terms of like films with like Godzilla. We even predate Star Wars. The difference is with Star Wars and Godzilla fans is Godzilla fans will literally be happy with anything. You could like
Yeah.
service like you could service the most cheesy dog shit and we will eat that shit up because we're like, it's the cheesy version of Godzilla. Yum 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 yum. Versus like Star Wars fans just
We'll be pissed about everything.
will be pissed about
Godzilla at the
everything.
Yeah.
disco. Let's go.
Yeah. So, um just take it from me. If you love this movie, I really recommend giving the other Godzilla films a shot. You might be surprised at like some of the depth they will go to. I think from a, of course, technical perspective and acting perspective, this is definitely like the peak of Godzilla, like the best it's ever been. But I think there's a lot of really good Godzilla stories waiting out there for people to check it out. So please, I strongly urge if you love this movie, go check out some of the other stuff. It's also fantastic. As for the movie itself, I have seen it around 2 to 3 times in theaters. Some of those times in color. I also watched the Godzilla minus color version where it's in black and white. Amazing. I the black and white is not just a gimmick. It is so good. I don't know if Netflix has the minus color version, but
They're getting it in a couple weeks or so.
fuck yes. I
I'll
really
say if you
recommend.
want, you can do Amazon Prime Video has it in black and white as well.
Dude, that's amazing. Then I highly recommend watching Godzilla minus color because like it's the same film in black and white, but they do such a good job with the effects, and it really does make certain moments really just pop out. In some ways, kind of make it even more horrific. So definitely give it a shot. So yeah, that's my stance on everything. I'm so happy to just have like I'm just so it I never would have dreamed we would have a podcast where we would have everyone in agreement of like this Godzilla movie fucking slapped. Let alone be a Godzilla film. So I'm just happy that we finally did this podcast.
We've come a long way from in the early days. I did a podcast with my friend Nick, and I said one of my favorite films of the year was like Godzilla versus Kong, and he was just rolling his eyes at me, and I was like, all right. That one I actually did because that one was just like cheesy and destructive fun, but that was fun, cheesy, and destructive. Now we're at one where I'm like, no, it's like a good freaking movie. It's a very good movie.
Have you managed to
Fun and
convince
cheesy
him to
could still
watch?
be a good movie.
Yeah, I think in general with films, and this is my quick rant. It's more important with any sort of media. Just be. This is so corny. Be true to yourself. If you're going to be a serious Godzilla film, be a serious Godzilla film. If you're going to be a goofy Godzilla film, be a goofy Godzilla film. Just embrace that. You know, I think I prefer it when something fully commits to something that it wants to be rather than half-assing a bunch of different things, which I think we get a lot of movies like that nowadays.
Be the Godzilla film you want to see in the world.
Exactly. By the way, is your friend Nick, right?
Yes.
Did you finally convince him to watch Minus One?
Oh no, he watched Minus One. No, he really liked it. Yeah, he wasn't the one that
Okay,
was like
okay.
hard to convince. No, I was talking more about
All right,
like
cool.
my coworkers and stuff. Yeah. No, but like
We'll
Nick's
get
films
there.
are-
We'll break it down.
Yeah, it's the American ones that like he doesn't want to see. But yeah, that's about everything for this Godzilla podcast. And before we wrap up, we are going to talk about our fresh picks of the week. This is what we've been playing, watching, or listening to when we're not recording this podcast. So, the man who is always prepared with his fresh pick every single time, we don't have to remind him ever, Randy. What's your fresh pick
Yep.
of the week?
You don't have to remind me
You've
ever.
never had to remind.
Ever.
Every time right before this podcast, Randy's like, I got the fresh pick. Don't forget your guys. He said that every time.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. And then Seth always has to like
no.
make something up. No, I'm joking.
No, so what I've been listening to recently is a album by a band called Bring Me the Horizon. So I know I've probably mentioned them before on our podcast about music because they pretty recently did a tour with one of my favorite bands, Sleep Token, in Australia, and I was like, damn, those shows would have been amazing to see, but that's in Australia, and that is very far. But they just put out an album at the end of May called Posthuman Next Gen, and it's incredibly uh good. And they did get a little bit of backlash on I remember like I think an Instagram post for this song that had basically like an upside down cross, and people were like, you're not Christian? And I'm just like, what part of Bring Me the Horizon and any of their songs um have made you think that they're a Christian band? Anyway,
That's interesting.
Yeah.
yeah. I don't know why they got
Rise
backlash.
Against
I was
the
like,
Machine
you
isn't
listen
a
to the
capitalist
lyrics.
band? What?
Oh, yeah, that too.
Yeah.
You're telling me that Rise Against the Machine is not an alt-right band? What?
Yeah.
Um, but anyway, there's a lot of really good songs on here. One of my favorites is, let me actually open up the song list. One of them is Kool-Aid, which is really good about just kind of, I mean, getting roped in to I think like large groupthink and stuff like that. Let me just pull up Spotify. So uno momento, por favor.
There's also Pusse.
Oh yeah, yeah, that
Pussy.
song slaps. It's literally it's just like it just goes off and it's just like, hey, it starts initially like, how could LSD help you reach euphoria? And it's just like goes on. It's just like I think the questions on everyone's lips is, what would you do for pussy? And then it's just like it's a really cool mesh of like metal and kind of like EDM. And so I guess probably in general, I've really liked this genre blending recently in metal between Sleep Token mixing like R&B and stuff in. Um, and then you have Bring Me the Horizon bringing in like EDM stuff in it. It's good.
All right.
There we go.
I'll listen to some music. All right. Seth, what have you been playing, watching, or listening to?
Yeah. So I got a short one. I got a long one. The short one is Elden Ring: Shadow of the Erd Tree.
Never heard of
I
it.
really don't think I need. Yeah, I don't think I need to say anything about it. I feel like the conversation has been so dominated by everything with it within the past couple of weeks in terms of games. Um, I'll just say this: Shadow Tree is fantastic. Elden Ring was my game of the year when it came out in 2022, and Elden and Shadow the Erd Tree is just Miyazaki continues to fucking cook, and he cooked real good here. Um, there is a good chance that that game will pop that DLC will pop up at the end of the year as potentially on my shortlist to game of the year. There's a good chance. So yeah, go play it. There's plenty of things out there talking about it. My actual fresh pick is a game that I want to talk about because I am afraid, because of the timeline it came out so close to Elden Ring's DLC, it's gonna get buried. It largely has already been. It is a game called hashtag Blood. I am so sorry. I hate that title too. Blood is spelled BLUD. Hashtag is
Oh,
part
my
of the name.
God.
Yeah,
Blue.
it's not a great name, admittedly, but look past it. It's actually a game that, while mechanically it's very simple, it's basically just a Legend of Zelda type game. You get
You have my undivided attention.
old school Legend of Zelda. I'm talking like Link to the Past, which is I love. I felt like we were getting a lot of those games in that genre like a couple of years ago, like Tunic and Death's Door. And I feel like this is another interpretation. Now, it's very simplistic in its design, but I think what really makes it stand out is its animation style because it is evoking a lot of early 2000s Cartoon Network Nickelodeon vibes. Just look up the game hashtag Blood and watch it in motion. It looks like a thing, like it looks like Foster's. It looks like The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy. It looks like My Life as a Teenage Robot. All these things come together, and it looks so good in motion. gameplay wise, it might leave a little desired if you play a lot of games in the genre, but I think it's worth playing just for the humor and personality that it brings to it. The idea around hashtag blood is it is about a a young girl coming to a new town, and she is basically having to fight off an invasion of vampires from taking over the town. And it is just done so well. Like the animation is gorgeous. Apparently, this is the first game by the studio. I think Exit 73 Studios, which is actually in the past have been like an animation studio that has assisted play people like clients like Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon. But this is like their first game that they've ever made.
I can see
Um,
it in the trailer right now. I'm watching as you're talking about this.
it's it's such a cool game. It's and like I said, sadly, I think it's I love it like just for the personality. Like there's a really cool mechanic where you can take selfies and you can post them to social media. And but what's cool is like you can go up to like different characters in the world or even enemies and animals. You take selfies and then it'll be posted and then you'll get like these comments and they're always like lead to like a fun little joke or something like that. Um I remember there was one like Star Wars one that like kind of hit me out of nowhere where it's like you were the chosen one thing out of nowhere. It's like, okay, I was not expecting that, but that's a funny joke. There's just so much clearly love and passion and work put in by the animators to make this game like evoke a very certain period of cartoon animation that really speaks to me personally. And I hope it doesn't get buried. I know it's asking a lot. It is $25, which is a bit more pricey for an indie game like this, but I'm begging people, please just give this a shot. I love the world it's creating. I love its humor. I love its style. I think there's a lot on offer with this game. And even though I haven't beaten it, I've only played like maybe about 3 to 4 hours, but it's so oh my God, it's so much fun. Here's my thing. If you can't buy this game, uh if you're even mildly interested in it, wishlist it,
Yes.
show some sort of interest because that goes a because from what I've been reading up on and hear about recently, it goes a long way for showing like interest in games where let's face it, not everyone has time or the money to afford every game, but even if you just show interest, it goes a long way in helping developers when they present their case of like, see, people are interested in our game. It helps them out. So go out there. If you can't buy it, wish list it, show interest about it, share it online that other people need to check it out. Because I just think it was unfortunate that I think the game came out like within a week or two of Elden Ring's DLC coming out. So it practically got no coverage. No really reviews from big websites or anything like that. And it's honestly really sad. So yeah, check out hashtag blood. That's what I'm putting out.
That's actually the first time I've heard or seen anything about the game. Yeah, I just watched like the whole like 3 minute trailer that was on Steam. Yeah, no, that looks like really good. That's like something I would watch on like Cartoon Network as a kid.
It's
So
so good. And
as soon
it
as
gets
that ended, I threw it on my wish list. Like I want to play this sometime.
and the best part too is like that's just like the gameplay and stuff. And then when it gets to the animated cutscenes where it really gets that show quality, I'm like, oh my God. I will put this out there. No voice acting in it. Everyone kind of talks in Simlish, so be warned of that. But it's impressive. I think people should check it out.
They need to fix the title before I even begin to look at it. Spelling with a U is disgusting. All right,
Yeah.
Robert, your turn. What have you been
All
playing,
right,
watching, listening to?
this is something I played like a month or two ago when it came out. Is the HD remaster port thing of Paper Mario Thousand Year Door.
Hmm.
That is a game I played the ever living hell out of as a kid, and I definitely wanted to pick it up on Switch. And I was like, is this as good of a game as I remember it being as a kid? The answer is yes. I fucking love Thousand Year Door. Um, it's a Mario RPG, so those tend to be pretty like fun and creative as is. But this one just tends to go a lot harder on like the story and the characters in the world than you would really expect from a Mario game. And it's something that Nintendo's kind of slacked on, especially like more in recent years. Because like back in like the GameCube era, like Game Boy DS, they did like a lot of like fun and creative stuff with Mario. And I feel like especially towards like the Wii U and Switch era, a lot of the time you kind of see the same like standard like Mario side games. But this was back when they like Mario getting like side stuff was like new and creative and they were like to take risks with it. And you could definitely kind of feel this unique vibe to it that isn't really in any other like Mario games. And I think the Switch version is probably the best version of the game to even play. There's just a lot of like little quality of life things that make the game so much better to play. The only downside really is like the frame rate being a 30 frames per second instead of 60. But if you can look past that, which I strongly suggest you try to do, then you're coming from like one of like probably one of the most polished like RPGs I've really played like on the Switch. Um, and it's really good for like people that aren't super into role playing games. It's a good entry point as well, since a lot of our viewers probably aren't much like RPG fans like I am.
It also seems like that with this because this is a fairly you said this is a fairly recent re-release of Thousand Year Door, right?
Yeah, it came out like a month or two ago.
I feel like from the conversation I've been hearing about it is that it's more in line of what I mean. Obviously, it's a remake of a beloved game, so of course it's going to be exactly what people want.
Yeah.
But like I remember that like there was a little bit of like um I wouldn't say fatigue, but maybe a little bit of disappointment that not much more was being done with Paper Mario, I think, as like a series within the Mario stuff. Because I think I seem to remember that with Origami King, some people were kind of left with like, was it Origami King? Or maybe I think of something different where people are like, they wanted a bit more out of it than that. And it
It
seemed to
is
be,
Origami King too.
okay. Yeah, because that's what I was hearing is that like, oh, they wanted a bit more out of it, and I remember people like kind of talking, not saying that fans were justified it, but like they were kind of saying like Thousand Year Door remake is like, oh man, this is what I missed. This is the shit. This is why I love this game so much. That's kind of the thing I've been hearing.
Yeah, that's something that they've kind of done with the Paper Mario series after Super Paper Mario, is that they have like mechanics that are really simple, but they make it to where combat isn't very satisfying. Like Sticker Star had the sticker mechanic, but if you spent your stickers, you'd have to get coins to get them back. It's like you're basically kind of wasting your time with fights in that game. I'm not sure about Color Splash, but I think there was similar critiques as well that the combat just kind of felt pointless. Origami King, it was pretty easy, but you didn't get experience, just money, and it was more just kind of like puzzles rather than actual like fights.
Hmm.
Um, so that's something that like Thousand Year Door and like the original did well is that, it felt like the fights actually mattered and they were like, skill checks in a way. Like they were satisfying to pull off. Like you could do like these crazy high damage like strategies and stuff that you really can't do in like anything after like Super Paper Mario. The Super Paper Mario is kind of its own beast because it's more of like, a platformer rather than a full-on RPG. Like you don't go to turn-based combat or anything. It's just kind of, you hit the enemies with just your attacks and like the overworld and stuff.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think it seems to me that like with the Paper Mario franchise, it seems to be like some of the disappointment is like they introduce maybe I don't want to be too insulting, but like maybe half-baked kind of gimmicks, like maybe like things that just like this could have been developed a lot more and it just wasn't with other games, and it feels like that Thousand Year Door is like kind of the peak that they want they want Nintendo to recapture.
Yeah. It's like I think Thousand Year Door is like the pinnacle of the series, and a lot of people, though people really do like the first game, and then Super Paper Mario also is really good. Everything after that's just kind of been like pretty rocky.
All right. Well, with that little mini review out, um, the last fresh pick would be mine. And for me, this past week there have been three pretty good, like really good horror movies coming out. Quiet Place Day One, very well done, especially if you like the original Quiet Place. Maxine, which if you don't know the X Pearl Maxine series, you should watch the horror movie and just in general fans. But the one I wanted to talk about a little bit was kind of the unknown, which was Longlegs. This was the one that was produced by Nicolas Cage, and he is like the monster, the villain. But Longlegs is really good. It is one of the best shot movies that is just has come out this year. Period. It does really clever things where it puts its main character basically in the middle of the frame and will like leave a lot of space around her, so you're like constantly looking for things in the background. Occasionally, yeah, there's like little creepy things in the background, or it'll stay on a shot like well after people have already walked out of frame. And it's just such a very well shot horror film, and it has such a creepy atmosphere. A lot of people described it as like having similar vibes to like Silence of the Lamb, and Longlegs is really well done. Has been getting some traction basically just through like word of mouth, and I recommend anyone who's like, oh, I really want to see like a good horror movie. First off, don't look up anything about Longlegs, and then go see Longlegs. Like, it's really good, and yeah, one of my like favorite movies of the year. I don't think it's my favorite horror movie of the year because Late Night with the Devil also came out this year, but it's definitely up there. It will definitely be in like my like top 5 movies by the end of the year. But
I will contend. I will contend. Sorry, because I'm kind of aware about this film too. I wouldn't go to say that it's a unknown because it's because like from what I've seen, they've been going really hard with like the promotional material around this film, especially on TikTok. And like I see a lot. Maybe it's just the circles I'm in, but I've seen personally a lot of advertisements for it, and I've seen a lot of conversations around like Longlegs without me even having to search it up.
Yeah.
So like I don't know if I would say it's like a unknown. Not saying it's still not worth watching. Obviously, I think there's a good reason why a lot of people
the others that are out right now, because like basically 3 horror movies came out practically at the same time, and this is the one that's like, it's not connected to a franchise. It's not connected to anything. It's not a sequel or a prequel, anything. That's why it's kind of like, it's almost like fighting the other two. And at least for me, I've seen advertisements and things for it, like on TikTok and stuff. But like, in terms of like commercial advertising and like big production stuff, the other two have probably more money behind it. But Longlegs is getting talked about more in circles, and like people are talking about Longlegs more because it's the more unique one. Not to say that Quiet Place or Maxine are bad, but Quiet Place is the one that's like sticking with people. That's why you're probably hearing about more on like TikTok and stuff versus like seeing a commercial for it. So
like are you saying I'm seeing more Quiet Place or Longlegs on TikTok? Because I'm definitely seeing more Longlegs.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean. You're seeing more Longlegs on TikTok because more people are talking about Longlegs.
Yeah, well, also the advertisements too. Like I see like the neon pictures, like their account stuff too.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't see that very much, to be honest, but doesn't matter. Anyway, that's everything with this podcast. I want to thank Randy for joining us.
Absolutely, it was a pleasure.
Yep. And I want to thank Robert. Thank you for taking your time out of being a very busy father to talk with us.
Okay, being a cat dad's not that intense.
Look, I realize that like you have responsibilities now. All right, I get it.
Look,
you don't have to make excuses. It's okay.
Either way, I'm happy to have gotten to kind of jump out of my comfort zone a little bit for movies and try this movie out. Really enjoyed it.
And then yeah, speaking of jumping out of comfort zone, Seth, thanks for coming in and talking about a movie that you probably didn't have any interest in.
Yeah. I hope this isn't the last time we get to talk about a Godzilla film. Like, I truly hope it's not.
No, probably not. Honestly, it was nice to like having one person that's like an expert on everything with Godzilla and all like the small things and all the extra details. But most importantly, I want to thank you guys for either listening or watching. I always appreciate you, and as always, stay safe out there. Goodbye.